The ballroom shimmered under a sea of golden chandeliers, their light dancing on the polished marble floor like liquid stars. It was the annual charity gala at the grand estate of Lexington Manor, a place where the city's elite gathered in sparkling gowns and expensive suits, clinking champagne glasses as they whispered about business, wealth, and who was wearing what. Among the guests, a woman walked in wearing a breathtaking emerald dress, the fabric flowing like a river of silk, hugging her curves with elegant grace. Her name was Amara. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her warm brown skin glowing against the rich green fabric, her smile soft but radiant. She wasn't just another woman at the party, she was the beloved wife of one of the most powerful men in the city, billionaire entrepreneur Jonathan Blake. But she didn't flaunt her status. Tonight, like every other night, she moved with humble elegance. She greeted the servers with kindness, smiled at the band, and made sure everyone felt seen. That kindness, however, was mistaken by one woman as weakness. Rebecca Hargrove, dressed in diamonds and disdain, stood with a cluster of guests near the champagne fountain. Her lips curled when she noticed Amara entering. Rebecca had always believed money and power belonged in certain hands, hers, and those who looked like her. She didn't know Amara personally, only that she was some black woman Jonathan married. And to someone like Rebecca, that alone was enough to ignite petty cruelty. As Amara approached a table to check on a nervous young waitress struggling with a tray of desserts, Rebecca's eyes narrowed. She leaned toward her friends and whispered, "Look at her, probably one of the help trying to fit in. Poor thing doesn't even know her place." Her friends chuckled softly, but Rebecca's cruelty didn't stop there. She stepped away from the group, her heels clicking like tiny hammers on the marble, and walked straight toward Amara. "Excuse me," Rebecca said sharply, her voice dripping with superiority. "Be a dear and bring me another glass of champagne, would you?" Amara turned, polite and composed, and simply said, "I don't work here." Rebecca raised an eyebrow, almost offended that Amara dared speak to her that way. "Of course you do," she scoffed. "You people always do. Don't be shy now." The young waitress beside Amara froze, her eyes wide, unsure what to say. Amara, not wanting to cause a scene, smiled gently and replied, "I'm a guest, Rebecca." Rebecca flinched at the sound of her name. How did this waitress know who she was? That tiny sting of being wrong only fueled her temper. "A guest." Rebecca barked out a sharp laugh that drew a few curious stares. "Sweetheart, this is a private event. And we don't hand out invitations to, well, just anyone." Amara didn't flinch. Her poise remained intact. But Rebecca wanted a reaction. "You know what?" she sneered, stepping closer. "You don't belong here. That dress." Her hand shot out, before anyone could stop her. And with one cruel, swift motion, she grabbed the delicate silk and yanked. A loud rip sliced through the music. Gasps erupted across the ballroom. The emerald silk tore at the seam, and a piece of fabric dangled from Rebecca's hand like a trophy. The band faltered, the violinist's bow stuttering over the strings. Guests turned, jaws dropping at the sight. Amara stood there, the top of her gown ripped, clutching the fabric to keep it from falling further. Her eyes glistening not with shame, but with a deep, steady fire. But Rebecca wasn't done. She threw the ripped fabric onto the floor as if discarding trash. "Next time," she spat, "wear something appropriate for serving people like me." For a long, breathless second, no one moved. Then came a low, controlled voice from behind the crowd. "Rebecca." The air shifted. People stepped back, almost instinctively, as Jonathan Blake, tall, commanding, dressed in a midnight black tuxedo, stepped through the stunned guests. His blue eyes burned with an icy rage no one dared challenge. He stopped beside Amara and gently draped his jacket over her torn dress, shielding her with quiet strength. When his hand touched hers, the entire room felt the weight of his love for her. Rebecca's face drained of color. "Jonathan," she stammered. I didn't. She was. She, Jonathan interrupted coldly, is my wife. The room fell silent again. So silent that the sound of a single champagne bubble could have echoed. Rebecca's lips parted, but no words came. She had torn the dress of the one woman she thought was beneath her, only to discover she'd just assaulted the wife of the man hosting the event. Jonathan's jaw tightened. You thought she was a waitress, he said slowly, almost like he was tasting the words. And that made you believe you had the right to humiliate her. Tear her clothes. Strip her dignity in front of hundreds of people. His voice grew sharper with each word, until even the chandeliers seemed to tremble. Rebecca shook her head frantically. I didn't mean. Jonathan raised a hand, silencing her. No. You did mean it. That's the problem. He turned to the crowd, his voice now booming like thunder. This is what hate looks like. Ugly. Small. Vicious. And tonight, at an event meant to raise money for children in need, you showed everyone exactly who you are. Murmurs rippled through the room. Someone whispered, I can't believe she did that. Another, she's finished. Jonathan didn't stop there. He walked closer to Rebecca, but not in anger, in power. You thought my wife was less than you because of the color of her skin. But let me make this clear. Amara is the strongest, smartest, and most extraordinary woman I've ever known. She owns 2 companies. She funds scholarships for young black women in this city. And she's the reason this event even exists. He turned his head slightly. Every penny you see raised tonight, every dollar going to charity, is because of her. Rebecca staggered back a step, the weight of her humiliation pressing like a storm on her chest. I didn't know. Jonathan's voice dropped to a lethal calm. You didn't care. Someone began clapping. It was soft at first, just one guest. Then another joined. And another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom erupted into applause, the sound rising like a wave. People weren't just clapping for the speech. They were clapping for Amara, for her dignity, her strength, her grace under cruelty. Amara stood tall, holding the jacket around her shoulders. A tear sliding down her cheek, but it wasn't a tear of pain. It was power. She had been humiliated publicly, but she hadn't broken. And now the woman who had tried to shame her was drowning in her own disgrace. Rebecca turned to run, but the security Jonathan had quietly signaled moved in. Escort Miss Hargrove out, he ordered, his tone final. She won't be welcome at any future events. Ever. As Rebecca was led away, whispers followed her like a trail of ash. People who once flocked to her side now turned their backs. Her diamonds couldn't save her reputation. Her wealth couldn't buy respect. Jonathan turned to Amara, cupped her face gently, and whispered. You don't ever have to hold your head down for anyone. I wasn't going to, she replied with a soft, strong smile. He smiled back and kissed her forehead. Then, without hesitation, he took off his own bow tie, loosened his shirt, and wrapped his arm around her waist. Let's dance, he said. But the dress. Doesn't matter, he interrupted softly. They'll remember you. Not the dress. And so, as the band picked up a slow, romantic tune, Jonathan and Amara walked to the center of the ballroom. The crowd parted like a curtain, making way for them. He held her close, and she rested her head on his chest. The guests watched, not a billionaire and a woman of color, but a man deeply in love with his wife. And a woman who refused to be broken by cruelty. The applause grew louder. The lights glimmered brighter. The night, which had almost been tainted by hate, was now illuminated by something far more powerful, love and respect. Later that night, footage of Rebecca's cruel act and Jonathan's powerful defense of Amara flooded the internet. Millions watched. Comments poured in. She stood tall. That's real love. You can't tear down a queen. The world saw what happens when hate tries to humiliate, but love stands taller. And for every person who has ever been looked down upon, judged, or mistreated just because of their skin, That moment became a symbol. A reminder that dignity is more powerful than cruelty. And love will always silence hate. So if you're listening to this story right now, remember, stand tall. Never let someone else define your worth. And always believe that the truth of who you are will shine through the darkness.